Welcome to Chat Off the Mat. This is Rose, and I am so excited to have on the show today my teacher and also my friend, Terry Cockburn. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
I just want to say, Terry, I've known Terry for a while. We've never met in person, but it all began several years ago when I took a training class with Terry and her partner, Josh, who we're going to talk a lot about their school. And we just are like kindred spirits. I say sometimes we're like sisters. Not only do we have a love for orange, right? We love orange, but we also have two boys around the same age.
hmm
And yeah, so we've become friends along the way, and I'm really excited that you're here today with me, Terry.
Thank you. I was honored and thrilled to receive your invitation to
Yeah.
come on the show.
Yeah. So I was talking to Terry before this show, and one of the reasons why I've asked her to be here is because I feel that her style of teaching and her story has inspired me to just become a better teacher overall. But I know my audience, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that maybe they want to try something different or new, or are inspired to hear about my guest stories and how they've evolved or how they've transitioned from one stage of their life to another. So I'm going to ask Terry, like I ask a lot of my guests, if you can share with me or us your personal journey, how you became a yoga instructor and even when you were a studio owner, and what inspired you especially to become a teacher.
Mm, I thought of this question. I I've always been athletic and involved in moving my body in a variety of ways. And I played sports when I was in high school and beyond high school. And I fell right into the gym culture when I right after high school. And and even in that gym culture, I got pulled into subbing step aerobics classes, step
Mm,
aerobics classes and spinning classes. So just my participation of taking those classes and being a regular at the gym, it led into this little side gig of leading group fitness. So I started in leading group fitness, and that kind of propelled me towards personal training. So I got into personal training and working with clients individually. And I didn't even discover yoga until a friend of mine got into it through some VHS tapes back
wow.
in the day. So
VHS tapes. Wow. I'll have to
VHS,
put a
that's you might
link
need
and
a link.
explain what those are. Maybe not to
Um,
everybody, but
I know. So I started doing the Brian Kest trio of his power yoga tapes, and that was in connection with my workouts, my weight training and gym type activities. I was also playing at the time, I was playing some extra soccer, like adult league
oh
soccer
wow.
at the time. And I loved the videos. I thought they were great. I thought that some of his language was a little weird and I didn't understand the Sanskrit, but I loved how I felt. And when I started doing those, I was incorporating some of the yoga movements in my group fitness classes. So step aerobics with a little bit of yoga, and instantly people were drawn to it. No one was teaching yoga at this time. I think this was maybe in 97, 98. And my little gym in Brunswick, Maine was, just the place where I cut my teeth, I think, in leading some yoga poses to the general public. And I continued on with the gym culture and the group exercise culture. And it was, I think, in 2003, no, 2004, I went, or maybe 2005, I went to a real yoga class with a friend of mine. And oh, let me back up by saying when I was pregnant. So I was
Right.
pregnant
I was gonna
in
say you were pregnant
yeah,
at this
my
time. Yeah.
pregnancies, I had 2 pregnancies, my kids are, I didn't have them both at the same time like you did.
Right.
I
Close enough.
separated them by 18 months, so they're 18 months apart, so I had back-to-back pregnancies essentially, and during both pregnancies, I did a VHS tape of, it was that had 2 prenatal videos, and one video brought you through all 3 trimesters. So it had, I don't even
Oh,
remember
wow.
the name, but it was 3 women who were in different stages in each trimester. So they were showing
Hmm.
the variations of the routine and the poses. I followed that pretty religiously through both pregnancies.
Hmm.
And I continued to lift weights and walk a lot and just do what I could do with my time and expanding
Restless
body.
restless behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was that's really what I did for years. I did VHS tapes, and then in around 2004 or 5, my very good friend brought me to a yoga studio. It was an Anusara based studio that she went to regularly, and there was a certain instructor that she loved. I went to the class and I was blown away by the the duration. It was a 90-minute practice. There was
Yeah.
breath work. Again, there was all the funky Sanskrit terminology I had no idea it was about. And it was lying there in Shavasana where I felt every cell just
Mm.
vibrating. And I thought, I have never felt this way before, ever. And I became instantly hooked.
Hooked.
And it made me, again, wasn't a lot in my area. So living in the southern area of Maine, not uh, we're about an hour plus from the New Hampshire border. So Freeport
Right.
area, Portland, the largest city, about 40 minutes from where we live. That was the mecca, you could say, for yoga, and there were maybe 3 or 4 studios there. But then there was maybe one that was an hour away, an hour north. But there really was our options were limited. So I threw myself into yoga. My husband worked. I stayed at home with our young children. They were very little at that point. And 3 days a week, he would come home. I would basically high five him in the driveway, and I would
I'm
beeline
off to
it to
yoga.
class. I'm gonna get to yoga.
It's yoga.
It's all day. And I just bounced around among the few studios that were available. And I just went into all styles that I could do. And then I found there was a studio closer to me in Brunswick. It was a Kripalu based studio, and I loved the Monday class with Jen. She's the owner, still the owner, and that was the vigorous
Yeah.
style,
Power yoga. Yeah.
power type
Yes.
stuff. It's still
Vinyasa.
Kripalu. Yeah, it was still Kripalu based, but it was still strong enough where I was excited about the physical work we were doing. And then I basically committed to throwing myself into a yoga practice only for a year. And I said, I'm curious if I only do yoga and I don't lift weights and I don't do step aerobics. And I was kind of getting a little bored with some of that type of working out anyway. And thought, okay, I love this so much. What if I just did yoga for a year? What would that be like? And I would run intermittently around that time. So I committed to yoga only for a full year. And I loved how I felt. I loved how I was able to fit it in. I was absorbing every bit of information I could get on the subject of yoga. After that year, I said, okay, I haven't gone for a run at all. Let me see what it's like if I just go for a run right now. I ran 3 miles effortlessly, no pain,
Wow.
no anything. So I was, again, I felt like I was completely, I bought in 100% just in how I felt. So from there, I ended up taking a training in North Carolina with Stephanie Keach of Asheville Yoga Center, and I think she's still the director and owner and the head of that center. And I just started teaching. I was given a position at the studio in Brunswick, and then I ended up taking a position at a tennis club where, starting with a few classes on the fitness schedule, turned into a specially built studio within the fitness club, within the tennis club, I should say. And I was able to direct that yoga program. They created a yoga program and allowed me to direct it. And I was able to hire teachers and put a
Oh,
schedule together. And this was all when my kids were in preschool and entering into elementary school. And then from there, I just felt the calling to open up my own place, my
yes.
own studio, because I was really craving workshops and input from other teachers. And for me to get that, I had to travel. I had to go out of state to get any higher education. And a big part of my business plan, and it was all written down, is that I wanted to create a hub for the area to invite teachers from all over so other people can learn in a variety of ways. And I was just hungry for that information, but my lifestyle didn't really allow me to just up and leave every
Yeah.
weekend with young kids.
Mm-mm.
So that was really my start in, fitness and group fitness, and then discovering yoga, committing fully to yoga, and now it's sort of kind of full circle because I'm somewhat back into the, I want to say, weight training, strength training, fitness, functional fitness, but with the yoga mindset
Right.
and principles mixed in with that. So it's a bit of a mixture now.
So I'm hearing this story, and all I can think about is that you're almost like a pioneer in your area, just starting to, bring in more of the yoga, starting at the tennis center, and really allowing yoga to help yoga grow in your area because of this passion that you were immediately hooked. And I could see you just sitting there with all these books and learning so much because I'm the same way, and I know how hard you work. So I could just imagine it, and it must have been a lot of work putting together this hub. You just don't go from, I don't know, just teaching a couple of classes and then opening up a center. You there's so much involved, and you have a very entrepreneurial spirit about you, and I know that because I know, watched you. You're a creative force behind what you're doing now, so you have all that creativity. That was great. And I commend you because I could never do open up a brick and mortar like that, and do what you've done. Um so uh let's talk a little bit about how your teaching has changed. So when I first took your training several years ago, it was during COVID. I wasn't going to say the COVID word today, but I wanted to put it in context with that because I was supposed to come up to see you in Maine, and because of COVID, I couldn't come up and see you in person. And then so we did it, which worked out great because I was able to take all this training. And at that time, you were really working more with yang style approach to yoga, but teaching it to teachers, and that's why I was taking the class. And there was a variety of classes that were being taught um, in that teacher training. But one of the things I want to talk about before I talk about this other thing was when I took your training, you focus a lot on more of the functional approach to yoga or functional alignment. So lots of times, let me put it in perspective for listeners. When we go to yoga studios, lots of times people or teachers put you in a pose and they cue you in a pose. And sometimes they focus more on the shape of the pose, where what I learned from you, it's not more of the aesthetic alignment or the shape, but more of the functionality of the pose and how the pose feels in the body. And I wanted you to talk a little bit or how that came about for you, how you were inspired to teach that, or what changed for you. Did you do more aesthetic alignment poses or teaching, or uh, or classes in the past, and how that all changed for you, and how important that is for people to really feel things in their body versus how something should look. So,
Mm. Yeah. So I think the way it came about was my introduction to yin yoga, which came early on in my yoga journey. So I received my vinyasa certification in 2005 or no, 2006. And then in 2007, Josh Summers, my partner in
mhm.
crime in life, um, he uh, he led a teacher training that I found that he was leading in Boston, and it was again about I'd been teaching for about a year, thirsty for more knowledge, hungry for okay, how can I expand my teaching? I want to be inspired by another teacher. I had no idea what yin yoga was, but that training illuminated the understanding that our bodies are different, our bones are different. I'd never heard that before. So this is back in 2006, 2007, and not many people were aware of this. This is a yin yoga was very
New.
new, very
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
And the next year I did a training with Paul and Susie Greeley, because they came to Belfast, Maine, which is further up from where I live. But knowing that he was coming to the area, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to
So yeah. So
make,
so they're like the pioneers of
yeah.
yin yoga, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Paul Greeley is known as the godfather
Yeah.
of yoga. And, it was really then, and I was fortunate in that I didn't have this, long drawn out story of years of practicing in a specific way on the yoga mat without an understanding of bone variation. So
Mm,
that came to me really early on, even though I had been, taught to teach yoga in a very specific way. But since the moment I understood that bones were different in every single person's experience, I I always tried to teach a class with that in mind. So, yeah, the that functional approach that Paul Greeley spoke to, that Josh has spoken to, that was really the kind of that inception point. And it took years, and I would say it took me a good 6 to 8 years to smooth out my language
mm,
and my intention as a teacher in how to address students in front of me, because and I've been co-teacher for multiple 200-hour, 300-hour trainings, and I always wrestled with the inconsistency of what we're doing with our bodies, with the human body. And I recall certain teachers saying, well, in yoga, we do it this way, but in another modality, we do it this way. And I'm thinking, well, why? Why are we doing it that way? And is it beneficial? Is it healthy? Is it inviting longevity in one's practice? Or are we just trying to, get everyone's bodies to look a certain way? And I will say too, my years in owning a studio, I owned a studio for about 9 years before I closed due to the
COVID
pandemic.
word.
Yeah,
Pandemic.
the COVID word. But in that time period, I had a lot of the same students that were coming. There were students that came regularly throughout those years. And just in someone who's working with people in this setting and seeing what's working for them over time, what's not working for them. Are they feeling better? Are they still coming? Is anything changing in their experience? So I had the lived experience of being able to work with people over longer periods of
Yeah.
time to really to fine tune this and to ask questions and to play with things like, "I'll try this for a while. How's that going to work?" And there was a level of trust on their part, which I'm incredibly grateful for, because it's the students. It's a cliche thing to say, like, "Oh, those my students are my greatest teacher," but they are. And if we're having dialogue and and as teachers, we care about their experience, and we care
Yeah.
about their health and their longevity and vitality. And so it was helpful. It's like I had living subjects throughout my years of figuring out the best way to speak to this type of yoga practice, not just a cookie cutter, okay, let's bang out these, rote
Cues and
set of
yes,
cues and
instruction,
movements,
right?
right? And try to really massage something into truly a customized practice for people, even though we're all practicing in the same place at the same time, with the general cues being what they are, the actions being what they are, but everyone's finding their way to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of where
That
I was really
it's
lucky.
it's in it was a game changer for me. I don't remember how I found Josh as my teacher. He was also my teacher. I took the Yin Yoga module with him up in Boston in person, which was before everything got shut down. And that's when I was hooked with his style of training and taking the 300-hour teacher training with you and Josh. And incorporating that type of teaching approach in my classes has been a game changer. And it was for me too. And I was fairly a new teacher at the time as well. And I remember as a student being put into poses and pushed and prodded physically. You need to do this, and you need to have your leg parallel to the top of the mat when you're in swan pose. I'm pigeon pose. I'm like, but I can't do that. My knee's gonna break. And I was like, I felt like inadequate. And I was a teacher and a student at the same time, and then you guys came along. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the way to do it. This is how everybody should teach because everybody's body is different." So, yeah, so I teach that way now, and people are still, we workshop poses, we stop, we explore the body. You get people curious, right? On how to explore movement in their own bodies and how it should feel.
Mhm.
Which takes me kind of to segues to my next concept or question about being aware of what's happening in the body. So, we're teaching, right? So we're saying, okay, let's do this and let's explore this and let's explore that. But it's important for people to tune in that whole somatic approach or embodied approach, which I know you talk about. Talk about a little bit about how you encourage people to tune into their awareness or what that actually means so that people out there right now who practice or are listening or practice yoga can maybe get a little bit more curious about that. So,
That's a great question. It's a great bubble to raise. I think, and I would say, I used to say this at my studio, and my website had a section on how to get started. How do you even get started with yoga? And I always suggested, if you've never taken a class here, start with yin yoga, because yin yoga is on the ground. It is slow. There's a lot of time in the actual poses to give people a longer period of feeling and settling and acquiring that skill of being able to pay attention to what's happening energetically. What are they feeling in the body? As opposed to coming into a vinyasa class first time. You're standing, you're twisting, standing, you're balancing, you're looking around, you might arrive late and you have to be in the front row, and that's creating this whole other
energy, right?
psychological,
Yeah.
yeah, stress around, like, I got to perform. And so it becomes a performance for the other people on their mats than it does, or within oneself, than it does internally. So I think to for people to be able to understand, and then my further understanding of somatics and really how to regulate the nervous system, we want to take away all as many stressors as possible. So being as close to the ground as possible, being as internal as possible, maybe closing the eyes or slowly moving into movements with the understanding of, okay, we're going to, let's say, do a forward fold. This is how the spine moves. This is the intention. This is the area we're looking to target. In a yin setting or a quieter, more passive setting close to the ground, I think most students, in my experience and working with people, that seems to be the best place to start becoming aware of intention, sensation, energy, and it takes away all the other noise, all the
Mm,
other stress of trying to maintain a certain pace or try to align yourself in a certain way. So that's kind of where I would just kind of how I see that seed being planted and starting to take root, and just getting close to the ground, moving the
mm,
body through its available ranges of motion, moving all the parts. The spine moves forward, it moves back, it rotates, and it side bends. So teaching someone literally how their body is able to move and making sure that they're staying away from pain and even
right.
being able to identify pain. So sometimes people will ignore their pain, like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm fine,
Yeah, yeah,
I can do
yeah,
this." And then there are other times any bit of sensation can be alarming. So it's really meeting the person where they're
yeah,
at. So as a teacher, especially in a yin setting, I do feel that it's an invaluable tool to have as a teacher to be able to slow students down, to get them close to the ground. And it doesn't have to be a classic standard yin yoga class, but at
right.
least some portion of any practice on the ground, slow, connect, set the intention, or as the teacher, we're bringing here's the intention for this sequence or this class, and speaking to that, and then gradually building from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it really almost forces you to internalize your practice because you're sitting there with these sensations and you're like, wow, what is that? And understanding the intensity and that somebody's, we talk about mild to moderate sensation when we're in yin poses, and my mild to moderate sensation may be different than yours, right? So it's really kind of internalizing and not comparing the way maybe some people do in a standard vinyasa class. And how come I can't stand on my head that way? How come my body doesn't look that way? Because it doesn't. It's different for everyone. And so I'm noticing more and more yin classes being offered and more people really understanding and learning and being more comfortable. And it's a great complement to the more yang type exercises. And when we say that, we're saying like CrossFit training, running, all that Pilates, not Pilates, but like cycling and all that. So it really helps to create more of that mobility in the body by exploring those ranges of movement.
Mhm.
And one of the things that so you're talking about, you talk about movement and range of motion, and one of the things that you also incorporate in your classes, which I've loved to also explore as a teacher more, and my students love, is the biomechanics part,
Mhm.
which when there's exercises you do to talk about the mobility. Can you talk a little bit more about that, or maybe who's influenced you and teaching more of that and what that involves? Or because I love all that stuff. This is great
Yes,
stuff.
yes. Well, a lot of it has come from my own experience with physical therapy.
Ah,
That's really where I
interesting.
was sharing this with someone the other day, and I was like, you know what? When I
Hmm,
really think about when did I start to bring this type of modality into my classes, it dawned on me that it was from the things that I learned in physical therapy. I've had an ACL surgery, I've
wow,
had a replacement, I've had a reconstruction, I've had ankle surgery, I've had broke my ankle in a variety of places just about 5 years ago. I've had broken my wrist, I've had other surgeries, I've had C-section, and
right,
I didn't have physical therapy after that, but
right.
just that is really what got me interested in working with physical therapists,
Mm,
that, oh, this is kind of like yoga actually, but smarter yoga. And I would pull things. I would always have little things in my toolbox. And then it wasn't until I would say 2014 maybe, that I got even more interested in the I would say CrossFit. I did CrossFit. I feel like I've done everything, but
Mm,
it was actually through CrossFit that I learned about the functional range conditioning system. And the
yes.
functional range conditioning system was my really my big entree, you could say, for inviting what they call, I mean, moving your joints. They call it controlled articular rotations, CARD.
Right.
And
Sip
you know,
card.
I glommed onto that phrase for for many years, and so that really got me interested in, you know, mobilizing the body in all the ways that meant to within a pain-free doable range of motion, and teaching people how to, you know, how to move your shoulder, how to move your spine. This is how you move your hip, and see, this is how you move it, and this is how someone else might move it. Again, the benefit of a studio, you know, owning a studio, is that a lot of my classes felt like workshops. So like my
Mm,
weekly classes just felt like workshops. And we would, you know, I would use my body as an example, and someone else would volunteer to use their range of motion as an example. So educating the students there, how, see, everyone's different, but we're all having some experience, which Josh and I would do in trainings anyway. Um, so yeah, the functional range conditioning was the kind of my big opening into teaching yoga with sort of that sort of mindset of
right.
biomechanics, and not just, oh well, do bang out five sun A's and five
It's a
sun B's, and this is enlightenment, when we really think of biomechanically, there's so many. It's not a a really a great sequence for a lot of people, me included, after a long time.
right.
Like all those forward folds, all those, you know, the
Back
aggressive,
bends.
yeah. So I stopped teaching sun salutations back in, you know, just classic sun salutations, I think in 2016-ish or so. And yeah, so I've been kind of evolving and changing the script, you could say,
Yes. Yes.
around that. But as far as other influences, other teachers, oh, I love Laurel Beversdorf. I hosted
Mm,
her at my studio. She's a teacher. She was in New York City, and now she's in Alabama. She has a pretty strong online presence, and she collaborates with a physical therapist who, and they talk about all the things regarding strength, and especially for women, and that, you know, women our age, and, you know, just going through perimenopause, and, you know, going into menopause, and the importance of bone density
yep.
and strength,
Yep.
and being lifting strong, lifting heavy weight. And then how that plays out in a, you know, in the yoga context, why we want to do yoga, why we want to work with resistance, and why we want to work with heavy weights. So I really get a lot of information from her. And I have some local friends and colleagues who are physical therapists and body workers. So I'm bouncing a lot of my ideas, and running things by through people in that way. And I'm trying to think of who else inspires me in that regard. But that's kind of the start. Oh,
Mm,
the other thing I wanted to say too, another interest that I had was I got into the primal movement, the animal flow system, and there was just a lot of really fun and playful um, energy in that type
yeah.
of work. And so combining all of it, I feel like I've made a quilt in a way, like a kind of
I
a
love that.
mishmash quilt
Yeah.
with, you know, yoga training and personal training, like my you know, my education with training people how to lift weights safely, how to brace the body, how to, you know, hold your body in a way to allow you to lift load, and kind of staying current with the emerging, you know, and constant changing of the science around that. But the animal flow system brought just another level of playfulness into movement that I've also kind of I've been inspired by.
Yes, you have. I mean, and I have too. You just combine all these practices in a way that is so different and unique, yet so impactful. And you do this and people love it. Like, I'm part of your community. I've attended your trainings, your classes. I take what you teach me and I teach others and I share that I taken from you and people just love it. And before we talk about the next topic, and I just want to say if there's any teachers out there, yoga teachers, any type of physical teacher or instructor that wants to learn different approaches to teaching their students how to explore movement in their bodies, that they must come and check out your offerings. That I'm going to talk more about them, but it's just game changer stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
really, you just take the time to learn and to study. And I know the books you look at because I have a lot of the same books, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just a lot. But I know it really you're very passionate about teaching and educating. You don't just teach, you educate. And
Mm.
that's the difference between you and what I've seen with a lot of teachers. You really wanted to for someone to get a concept. I'm like, yeah, that really makes a difference in my body. And that's what I love about your style of teaching or educating, I should say.
Thank
Just
you.
wanted to share that with you. I'm your biggest fan, so hey, I'm gonna say it. Maybe next to Josh, but I'm gonna say I'm your biggest fan. So we have to talk about qigong because
Yeah.
we both love qigong, and what's funny is that that's why I think we're like sisters somehow. We have this intuitive connection because you started dripping in the qigong, but at the same time I started dripping qigong into my classes without us even, I think, knowing it. So we both love it so much, and we both have it in our teaching toolkit. We both studied under John Monroe of Long White Cloud Qigong. A little plug for our John. We've also been inspired by other Qigong teachers I know, Mimi Kuo Deemer, and I'm sure there's other Ken Cohen who you
Mhm.
love that his Qigong book. It's our Bible. Um, tell me about what inspired you to start to practice Qigong yourself, and also introduce it to your students who were there to do yoga, to do yin yoga, and all of a sudden you're getting up and you're doing like a different movement. So tell me a little bit about how you started incorporating it and why you think that energy was a good complement to what you were teaching.
Mm. Well, I started incorporating it actually the first time in front of live people when Josh and I were leading a silent retreat in Massachusetts. And it had been a part of my own personal practice for, I think, consistently at that point for about a year. I had broken my ankle the previous year and was non-weight bearing for 3 months. And when I was able to have my leg out of a cast and put my foot down on the ground, I started doing Qigong just sitting down. I followed a sequence online. I had taken it was a Tai Chi Qigong class led by a friend of a friend at Kripalu. And I loved the practice. I loved the instructor. She was my first teacher, Nina Henriksen, who is
Mm,
still doing her thing with her partner. And I loved how strong it was. I loved the movements. I found them really hard because they were choreographed, and the Tai Chi sequence is it's much more complicated in certain ways than Qigong is. But she really inspired me and I wanted to learn more. I kind of put it in my back pocket for a while until I was recovering from my ankle injury. And I found a sequence or a class that she had recorded on Facebook Live. And it was a video of her leading a group of students somewhere in Peru, and it was a 40-minute sequence. So I did that every day.
wow.
And it was that sequence, doing that every day, that where I was able to actually feel a change in my foot. So my foot had been casted, it had been, just it was broken in 3 places, it was a mess. And finally, when my foot was free and I could just place it on the ground, I was still wasn't 100% weight bearing, but I would sit in a chair and have my foot on the ground in my yard and just try to feel like try to adopt some of the language that she was using and doing all the movements that I could do. And then when I was able to stand and put gradually more and more weight on my foot over the course of a month or two, I was able to do the whole routine standing on my own 2 feet. And it was that routine, and she had a few other smaller routines on her YouTube channel that I just incorporated daily. And I could feel the buzz in my body. I could feel the tingling in my fingers. So, fast forward to leading a retreat, a silent meditation retreat with Josh. One of my roles as co leader was to lead the yin yoga practice. So we're silent, all the students are silent all day and going from one activity to the other. And when it came down to the yin yoga practice, I felt I took my
Yours,
just
yeah,
inserted my authority there and said, you know what, we've been sitting, we've been walking slowly, we've been mindful all day, like we need to stand and move the energy.
yes.
We didn't I felt like yin yoga was just it was too much stagnation, so
There was too much yin already.
it's too much yin. So
Right.
we had to move. So I started by I remember it so clearly, I started by saying at the outset, I'm like, I'm just sharing part of my own practice. I'm not trained in this. I've, I've done this through one teacher, and this is my understanding. And this is part of my thing that I'm just sharing with you. And people loved it. And I gained a little bit of confidence and how well that was received through that retreat and started to teach it at my studio in coordination with yin or even at the end of an active class. Okay, let's smooth out the energy.
Mm.
And then in that time period, I did a few privates with Nina, and but I didn't really like go head on into qigong. I was like, I love this, and I just don't have the time right now to overly think about it. And then we met
Yeah.
we met at the on an online I
Yeah.
think the Young online training, and I was doing the same thing what I was doing, just my little drips, and then you were like, oh, I'm doing kind of the same stuff,
Yeah.
and then you were already signed up, or maybe you had already taken the training, or you were in the middle of jogging.
I had signed up because I wasn't taking it until after your
Oh, right.
class.
So
Yes. Yeah.
you took the 200 his 200-hour first,
Yeah.
and it was
Small
because of
universe.
you, I ended up signing up for his 200 hour in 2000
21.
2021, and I did his 200 hour. It was perfect for me. I loved the on demand work at your own pace. Each week there's feedback from you get to work with an instructor, you get to meet with the community and have questions answered, and the layout was perfect. It was everything that I could have asked for at that for that. And yeah, so I have you to thank
Oh, yeah.
for that. And then through your recommendation, I think I want to say, like, in within our sangha that Josh and I have, I think I want to say like 7 or 8 people have taken that training
Oh,
because
really?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that's great.
you started a trend. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to tell John that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's great. I think that's how it goes. That's how it
Yeah.
flows,
I
right? Yeah.
know. I
Well, I
know.
mean, it was because you put it out there and and you do what you are intuitively guided to do, and I love that.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, I'm going to try it, and people love it because they keep coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And I'm glad you're doing that. And I'm glad that I know my intention is to really kind of spread the word about qigong and teach it. And I've been teaching it more and more, and a great way to really tune into the energy in your body, and
Mhm.
just a different way to move and tune
Mhm.
in, and it's great, and it's being people more receptive to it. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's a great practice. So it's nice to have other qigong and friends
Yes.
and to talk to about that. Um,
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to talk about this school. You and Josh have a school, and you have so many offerings, and so I want to ask you to talk about it because I mean I could read my notes here, and I'm a part of your school, your sangha, your community. It's really a great community, and you offer teacher trainings, workshops, uh, daily practice. So can you talk about your school and your offerings, and so people know about it.
Sure. Yes, Josh Summers and I have a school. We started the school, oh gosh, I want to say in 2015, maybe.
Wow.
And it started with Josh leading trainings in yin yoga, a foundations training, and then he expanded into a meditation training, and then we ended up collaborating and creating a 200-hour program. So we had 4 modules of which included yin yoga, meditation, traditional Chinese medicine and energy module, and a yang yoga module. So that was the module that I taught, and I would also teach foundations every now and then. And so he was traveling to Europe and all over, and I had the studio, and I was traveling maybe 5 times a year to teach modules all around. And now where we're at now is that we have expanded our curriculum. So we still have the 200-hour. The 200-hour track is everything is on demand, online, self-paced, and that we have we call it our foundations module. So it's the essentials of yin yoga, of meditation, and traditional Chinese medicine theory. So that's really the content of our foundations track. And now we are expanding into a second track as we expanded our curriculum, and we have 5 modules. They're all 20 hours. So this is a 100-hour track. And this is on really the energy of and really chi cultivation is what we're calling it. So it's each module has a specific theme. And the upcoming we have a module called purifying water, and that is the what we're calling the flow of chi cultivation. And by flow we mean flowing within in a more yang way. So it's not so much a yin yoga training. This is a course on mobility, stability, and flow. And how do we do that? We're primarily focusing on the spine. The next module, the second part of this one, will be it's our wood module, and that will be coming in later in the spring. And that's going to be the actions and the more yang movements of developing strength, and we look more intimately at the hips and the legs, so the pelvis and the legs, so think warriors and dragons and things like that. So that's our school, that's our curriculum. So if anyone wanted to learn from us, and the modules are a great way for even a beginner, someone who has no interest in teaching. It's
Right.
a great way for someone to understand what our really it's a deep dive into the theory of what it is we do. It's not necessary to take a training or a longer course. We have shorter workshops, we have shorter courses on our site. But what we really encourage is participation in our practice sangha, because that is what we're really emphasizing practice. Like how many times, how many trainings have all of us, if we're yoga teachers, we've done a boatload of trainings. Do we remember half the stuff? So we're really emphasizing practice. And in having a membership to our sangha, You have access to participate live if it works for your time zone and your schedule. So we have 4 classes a week. We have a meditation offering, a yin yoga offering, a yang yoga offering, and a qigong offering. And we have more people attend via the recordings. Not everyone can meet with us live at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which we completely understand. We also have a monthly 2-hour practice. So anyone who's ever done a training with us, or any Sangha member can attend, excuse me, that monthly practice. And that's a great way to have questions answered and just to get more FaceTime with
Mhm.
us. Like we really try to be available for people. People send us emails, or they'll message us in ways, and we try to address questions publicly as much as we can. And that is we're finding over the last 3 years, we developed the Sangha when we just we changed everything because of the pandemic and
Right.
join forces in this way. So our community is about just over 3 years old, and it's just been this ongoing, slow movement towards just regular, consistent practice.
Right.
And in the background, Josh and I are also putting out the trainings, the courses, the curriculum around the deeper theory, should anyone want that. But we are, it is, I've always felt this, I've always felt strongly about this when even when I had a studio and I managed teachers, I had at any given time between 13 and 16 teachers on my staff. And I tried to emphasize practice, and practice is practice with yourself. Your practice isn't showing up at a studio 3 times a week at a certain time. That's not, that's getting information, that's learning. But what's your own practice like? So Josh and I really try to emphasize that, the importance of that. And I know how I feel as a teacher when I'm not practicing and I don't feel like I'm showing up as well as I
Yeah.
can, and I don't feel integrated in what I'm doing. But when I stick to my daily practice and I am doing something, and it doesn't have to look a certain way, it doesn't have to include all the components that an ideal practice could have, but it's showing up for myself in whatever way that is really what we're trying to impart with our community. So
Yeah.
that's our, yeah.
That's lovely. That's great. And I think that this is a nice way to wrap it up because I could feel the passion about what you offer, what you just offer. And I know that my listeners or our listeners here are feeling that too. And I'm sure you've inspired many people to think about at least what their practice is and returning to that. And I really hope that people out there will go and see what you and Josh have to offer. And I've seen it grown. I've seen the community grow, and both you and Josh also. Um, it is just a beautiful environment, and I am proud of both of you as well, and I'm really really happy to be a part of it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you also are starting to do or work with Josh. He has a podcast, Everyday Sublime, and you're starting to do cheat chats along with him. So
Yes.
you're a podcaster
Yeah.
as well, which is awesome.
I just show up. He does all the work
Yeah,
for it. I
yeah, we
just
know.
show
Yeah,
up.
okay, yeah, yeah. You don't just show up. You do so much, and you both do, and just very grateful for both of you, and I'm very grateful that you took the time to be here with me and chat off the mat. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Rose. I'm grateful for you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, a sister on the path, and
Yeah.
I thank you for all that you've opened me up to, and I look forward to our continued journey
Journey.
together.
Yeah. Me too.
Thank you.